What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. I got to put out my prediction for Adonis Stevenson versus Chad Dawson. I really like this matchup, very intriguing for a variety of reasons, which I'll discuss in this video. And let's get right into it. So Chad Dawson, he's a guy with all the talent in the world. Sometimes he doesn't show up, sometimes he looks stellar. And in his last fight, he lost to Andre Ward. In my opinion, there's no reason to hold his head down low because Andre Ward is ranked number 1, 2, in most respectable pound for pound list. So to lose to Andre Ward or a fighter like that, there's really no shame in that. And just to Chad Dawson's credit, he fought that at Andre Ward's weight, 168, so he had to come down in weight. And he also fought it in Andre Ward's backyard of Oakland, so he didn't have the hometown advantage. It wasn't on neutral grounds, anything like that. So again, with all those factored into the equation, it's not a bad loss. Just don't fight at 168 again. I don't think his frame is the frame that supports it. And other than that, I like Chad Dawson, but he shows early symptoms of Victor Ortiz Zab Judah syndrome. And what I mean by that is there are times in certain fights where he looks visibly frustrated to the point where it affects his performance. I don't think he always keeps his composure in certain fights. Again, certain fights he looks stellar. He shows beautiful jab and beautiful boxing ability. But there are symptoms which I can't put him in the category of Victor Ortiz or Zab Judah right now just because I haven't seen as many occurrences of it. But I do see certain red flags that really make me worry about Chad Dawson in terms of lack of composure. Even if you watch the Bernard Hopkins, the first fight where he did the football tackle or whatever and dropped Bernard Hopkins, in his post-fight interview, it wasn't even really professional. He was just like, yeah, oh, and you could tell he was visibly mad. He didn't come to fight, and he seems like the type that he has sometimes he has a chip on his shoulder. And in boxing, we've seen time and time again, not having a clear head, a clear mind, could be very dangerous in boxing. I think a recent example of that would be Timothy Bradley. For whatever reason, depression, something to prove, he came into the Ruslan Provatnikov fight with a chip on his shoulder, and that was the most heart-filled performance we've seen from Timothy Bradley, but also the dumbest and the one where he actually looked the worst. So for fighters to not have a clear head, it could be really detrimental. But again, I like Chad Dawson. I think when he's on, he's on. He has beautiful boxing skills. And, I mean, he's a big guy, a big frame. As far as Adonis Stevenson, I don't think Adonis Stevenson has anywhere remotely near the boxing skill or the resume of Chad Dawson. I mean, Dawson's been in there and beat people like Tarver twice, Glenn Johnson. He's been in there with Jean Pascal, even though he lost that fight. He's been in there with Bernard Hopkins, living legend, twice. He's been in there with a lot more seasoned competition, better competition in my eyes than Adonis Stevenson. But one of the reasons this fight is intriguing to me is because Adonis Stevenson has an equalizer. He has a lot of power. He's a heavy-handed puncher, and they're also fighting in Quebec, which is his hometown. So Adonis Stevenson is going to have the hometown advantage there in Canada. So it makes for an intriguing match. Again, Stevenson has a puncher's chance. He has a lot of power in his straight left hand. And it could be for a good fight, especially with not knowing which Chad Dawson will show up or how he's going to bounce back off a loss from Andre Ward. Again, in my opinion, I don't think that's anything to be shamed about, or, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't shun someone from boxing for losing to a fighter like Andre Ward. That's my opinion, but sometimes after certain losses, you never know how people will respond to them. So for those reasons, hometown advantage, Chad Dawson off a loss. I mean, this is just a really intriguing match. In my personal opinion, I picked Chad Dawson to win a unanimous decision. Possibly if we see a very vintage, spectacular Chad Dawson, a late round stoppage, round 7 or on, possibly a stoppage. But I definitely see Chad Dawson winning. Again, he could run into problems with Stevenson's power. However, Stevenson is from a lower weight class, and he's moving up to face Chad Dawson. Chad Dawson has most of the physical advantages, having fought at 175 before. He's taller. I think Chad Dawson is 6'1". I mean, and he's a big dude. I don't know if some people really know this, but I mean, that dude is big. He said in the Andre Ward fight that he was weighing like 192, 196 during fight night. So the dude has a really big frame, and I think Andre Ward would have beat him even at 175, but it would have been a lot more competitive. But I think the going down in weight really did have an effect because, I mean, he looked like a zombie. He looked a lot slower. Not taking anything away from Andre Ward. I really like Andre Ward as well. But, I mean, he just looked like a zombie out there, like Zombie Land. He didn't look like the same Chad Dawson. He just looked drained. And then he said on fight night he was weighing 192 or 196. So the dude has a big frame, so I think he will be able to take Stevenson's punch. Stevenson was knocking out people, but again, these are smaller dudes. So I'm picking Chad Dawson for the win. Again, he could run into problems with Stevenson's power, but I think him moving up in weight, I don't think it's going to have as much impact. But you never know. When someone moves up in weight, sometimes their power carries over, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's even better, just depending on what they were doing to make weight and that kind of thing. So for all these reasons, this is a good fight. I really like it. I haven't heard many people talking about it. I just want to get my bid out, my prediction video. And for this one, I'm rocking with Chad Dawson. Like I said, really good matchup. Another thing with Stevenson that kind of worries me is his only loss was to Darnell Boone. And I don't think that's a respectable, even though he rematched Boone and he was able to avenge that loss. A loss to Darnell Boone, it just doesn't really make sense for Stevenson, who was on a roll. That's his only loss, so he's clearly on a win streak. And don't get me wrong, Darnell Boone was also the fighter who fought Andre Ward and knocked him down, but Andre Ward won that fight. Again, being a fighter who, Andre Ward is elite, so even with a knockdown, he could still compose himself and rally back into a fight. So Darnell Boone was just always one of the, kind of like a gatekeeper type person, someone who wasn't ever going to meet the bright lights and transcend over to the elite greatness side, to me. So even though he knocked down Andre Ward, just that loss to Stevenson, I don't even see why he lost to him.